Emmanuel stood at the gate, his faded blue uniform stained from a long day's work. As the gateman for the wealthy billionaire, Chige, he had grown used to the isolation. The mansion was vast, its towering gates and high walls giving it a sense of being a fortress. Every day, Emmanuel's job was simple: open the gate for the staff and close it when they left. But tonight, something felt different. Something was in the air. His mind wandered back to the days when he was just a young boy in the village. Life was hard, but he had always believed that hard work would lead to a better life. Now, in the city, it felt like he had nothing. His family was far away, and all he had was this job, this small, seemingly insignificant role in a wealthy man's life. Chige, the billionaire, was known for his cold demeanor. He was a man of power, wealth, and ruthless ambition. But his wife, Uzoma, was different. She was kind, gentle, and always took time to talk to Emmanuel when she came outside. Emmanuel had always admired her grace, the way she carried herself with dignity, and the kindness she showed to everyone, even to him, a mere servant. Tonight, as the sun set and the evening air grew cooler, Emmanuel watched the grand car drive up to the gates. It was Uzoma. She was returning home from an event, dressed in a beautiful, flowing dress that shimmered in the fading light. She smiled as she rolled down the window to speak to him. "Good evening, Emmanuel," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "Good evening, Madame Uzoma," Emmanuel replied, bowing slightly. There was a strange silence for a moment, and then she said softly, "Please, I need to speak to you. Could you come to the back door after your shift?" Emmanuel was taken aback. "Of course, madam. I'll be there." His heart raced. What could she possibly want with him? Later that night, when his shift was over, Emmanuel made his way around to the back door of the mansion. His mind was spinning with questions. What could Uzoma possibly need from him? Maybe it was just a friendly chat, he thought. But as he arrived at the door, he was met with a sight that would forever change his life. Uzoma was standing there, her eyes filled with fear, her usual composure shaken. She quickly pulled him inside, her hands trembling as she shut the door behind them. "Emmanuel, I need your help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm in danger. My husband, Chige, he's not the man I thought he was. He's involved with people who want something from me, something that could destroy everything we have. I don't know what to do." Emmanuel stared at her, unsure of what to say. He had never seen her like this, never heard the desperation in her voice. It was as though the strong, confident woman he had always admired was unraveling before his eyes. What are you talking about, Madame Uzoma?" Emmanuel asked, his voice shaky. She looked around, as if to ensure no one was listening, before pulling out a small, black envelope from her purse. She handed it to him. "I found this hidden in Chige's office," she explained. "It's a letter, a threat. They want something from me, and if I don't give it to them, they'll destroy everything." Emmanuel's eyes widened. What could be so dangerous? And why would Chige keep something like this hidden? Just as he was about to speak, there was a loud bang on the door. Emmanuel's heart leaped in his chest. The door was being pounded from the other side. A voice shouted, "Open up, Uzoma. We know you're in there." Uzoma's face drained of color. "They've found me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They're here. They want everything." Emmanuel's mind raced. What could he do? He was just a gateman. What could he possibly offer to help her? But then, he looked at her fear, her desperation, and he knew that he couldn't just stand there and do nothing. He had to act. "Stay here," Emmanuel whispered urgently. "I'll handle this." He turned and rushed toward the front door, but before he could reach it, he heard the door behind him creak open. Uzoma was standing there, her eyes wide with fear. "Emmanuel, please, help me. I don't know who else to turn to." The moment was suspended in time, each second dragging on as Emmanuel weighed his options. He could run, escape, but what about Uzoma? What would happen to her? Without another thought, he stepped forward. "Stay behind me. I'll protect you." As he spoke those words, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The men outside were getting closer. Then, without warning, the door burst open. Two men, dressed in dark suits, stormed in, their cold eyes locking onto Emmanuel and Uzoma. They looked dangerous. This wasn't some petty threat. These men meant business. "Get out of the way, Gateman!" one of them shouted, shoving Emmanuel aside. But as Emmanuel stumbled, he heard a faint gasp from Uzoma. She had stepped forward, her body trembling. "Please, leave us alone," she pleaded, her voice shaking. The man looked at her with a cold smile. "It's too late for that, Mrs. Chige. You've crossed the line." Emmanuel's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea what to do. He was just a poor gateman, but he couldn't let these men harm her. He couldn't let her be dragged into whatever dark world Chige had gotten involved with. In that moment, Emmanuel made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed Uzoma's hand and pulled her toward the door. "Run!" he shouted, his voice raw with urgency. But as they made it to the door, one of the men caught up with them. In a split second, he shoved Uzoma aside and grabbed Emmanuel by the collar. "You think you can protect her?" the man sneered, his grip tightening. But then, something strange happened. Uzoma, in a desperate attempt to protect Emmanuel, stepped forward and kissed the man on the cheek. It was a fleeting, gentle kiss, but the impact was immediate. The men froze, their eyes wide with shock. What happened next was something Emmanuel couldn't have predicted. The kiss lingered in the air like a secret. Uzoma's lips had brushed against the man's cheek, and for a split second, everything stopped. Emmanuel could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he stared at her, confused and startled by what had just happened. The two men stood frozen, their eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if time had slowed, and Emmanuel had no idea what was going to happen next. But then, the silence was broken by a deep, menacing laugh from the man holding Emmanuel. "Well, well," the man said, his voice dripping with disdain. "So, this is the game you're playing, Mrs. Chige? You think a kiss will save you? Think again." Uzoma stepped back, her face pale, but there was a hint of defiance in her eyes. "I did what I had to do," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You will not get what you want from me." The man shook his head, a mocking smile curling on his lips. "You're a smart woman, Uzoma, but you're too late. There's no way out of this." Emmanuel, still in the man's grip, was struggling to breathe as the man tightened his hold. His thoughts raced. What did the kiss mean? Why had she done that? Was it a distraction, a way to buy time? Or something more? Before he could process it, the second man spoke up. "Let her go. This isn't the time for games. We're here to take what's ours. And if she wants to avoid consequences, she'll do what we say." But Uzoma, despite her fear, didn't back down. "I won't let you destroy everything. If you want it, you'll have to go through me first." Her words, strong yet fragile, caught both men off guard. They looked at each other, unsure of how to respond. Emmanuel, still fighting against the man's grip, could feel the tension in the room tightening. There was something in the air now, an energy that felt like a storm about to break. "Enough of this?" the first man barked, finally releasing Emmanuel with a shove. Emmanuel stumbled backward, barely catching himself. "What is it that you want from her?" Emmanuel asked, his voice shaky but growing in strength. He wasn't sure what had come over him, but he wasn't going to let these men walk all over Uzoma. He owed her that much. The man who had been holding him looked at him with contempt. "You're just a poor gateman. Stay out of this, unless you want things to get worse." But Emmanuel stood tall, looking at Uzoma, who met his gaze with a faint, grateful smile. The room was silent for a moment, and then the man spoke again, his voice low and dangerous. "We're here because of Chige's mistakes," the second man said, stepping forward. "He's been hiding things, and now we need to clean up his mess. We'll take everything, and if that means we have to deal with you, so be it." Emmanuel didn't fully understand what was going on, but one thing was clear. These men weren't here for money alone. There was something more they were after, something darker. They were playing a dangerous game, and they were willing to hurt anyone who got in their way. Just then, a phone rang from Uzoma's bag. It broke the silence, cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. Everyone turned to look at her, the fear in her eyes clear. Slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out the phone, glancing at the screen. It was a call from Chij. The men looked at each other, their expressions unreadable. They knew that Chij could change everything, but they weren't ready to let go of their hold on Uzoma. Not yet. Uzoma hesitated, then answered the phone, her voice barely a whisper. Chij, I'm in trouble. The man holding Emmanuel, still eyeing Uzoma, turned to the other. We're wasting time. We need her to cooperate now, or we'll deal with her the hard way. But Uzoma, her resolve slowly building, shook her head. No, I won't give in. The man's face twisted with anger. You're making a mistake. And your poor Gateman here? He looked over at Emmanuel with a sneer. He's not going to help you. For a brief moment, Emmanuel's mind raced. He couldn't let this happen. Not to Uzoma. Not after everything she had done for him. She had always been kind, always seen him as more than just a servant. He had to protect her. And that's when he made a decision. He walked toward the men, ignoring the danger, his heart pounding. If you want her, you'll have to go through me, he said, his voice steady despite the terror running through his veins. I don't care who you are or what you want, but I won't let you hurt her. Uzoma looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and fear. Emmanuel, no, you can't. But Emmanuel didn't listen. The men stared at him, first in disbelief, then in anger. You're really going to die for her, aren't you? The first man asked, his voice cold as ice. He pulled out a gun from his jacket, pointing it straight at Emmanuel's chest. Emmanuel's heart stopped. The cold steel of the gun gleamed in the dim light, and he could feel the sweat forming on his palms. But he didn't step back. He didn't move. The tension was unbearable, hanging in the air like a thunderstorm waiting to burst. Just as the man was about to pull the trigger, there was a sudden noise from outside, a loud, chaotic sound of screeching tires and shouting voices. The men froze, their attention momentarily diverted to the window. It was a distraction. Emmanuel had no idea who it was, but he seized the moment. Without thinking, he lunged at the gunman, pushing him hard against the wall, knocking the gun out of his hand. The second man rushed forward, but Emmanuel was faster. He grabbed the gun, pointing it at them both. But then, a voice shouted from the doorway, "Stop!" Emmanuel froze, the gun trembling slightly in his hands. His heart raced as he turned toward the voice. Standing in the doorway was none other than Chij, his powerful figure filling the space. The billionaire, once the source of Emmanuel's quiet admiration, now seemed like a stranger. His face twisted in anger and disbelief. "Put the gun down, Emmanuel," Chij commanded, his voice cold and authoritative. "You have no idea what you're doing." For a moment, Emmanuel didn't move. The weight of the gun felt heavy in his hands, and his eyes shifted between Uzoma, who was still standing in shock, and Chij, who was now advancing slowly into the room. "Chij!" Uzoma called out, her voice desperate. "Please, help us. They're here for something much bigger than we are. I didn't want any of this." Chij's gaze flickered toward her, but then he looked back at Emmanuel, his expression hardening. "You're in way over your head, Emmanuel. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Put down the gun." But Emmanuel couldn't listen. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He had seen enough, heard enough. Chij was involved with these dangerous men. But what had his involvement really been? Was he truly part of the conspiracy? Or was he just another pawn in a game he couldn't control? The truth felt out of reach. "You think you can just walk in and change everything?" Chij sneered. "This has nothing to do with you." But Emmanuel, still holding the gun with shaky hands, retorted, "No, Chij, it has everything to do with me. You've put her life at risk. I won't let you get away with it." Chij's eyes narrowed, but he didn't make a move toward Emmanuel. Instead, he looked over at the two men, still standing silently in the background. "Leave us," Chij ordered sharply, his voice turning to ice. The men hesitated but then slowly stepped back, clearly waiting for a signal from their employer. Uzoma glanced nervously at the men as they retreated, but her attention quickly returned to Chige and Emmanuel. She opened her mouth to say something, but Chige cut her off. "You don't know the full story," Chige said, his tone almost pleading, though his face remained impassive. "I was trying to protect you. I thought I could fix things without dragging you into this." Emmanuel took a cautious step forward, his voice still steady. "Protect her? By getting her involved with criminals? By lying to her?" Chige sighed deeply, his expression darkening. "This is bigger than both of you. I didn't want her to know. I didn't want her to get hurt. But I had no choice. I'm in too deep." Uzoma stepped forward now, her voice trembling. "Chige, what do you mean? What have you done? Please, tell me everything." Chige shook his head. "You wouldn't understand. If I told you the truth, you'd hate me. I've been working with people who control the city's wealth, the underworld. I thought I could control it, but it's spiraled out of my hands. They want us to sell everything, to give up everything we've built. They want you, Uzoma, and now they want me too." Emmanuel's mind raced as he processed Chige's words. So this wasn't just about money or power, it was about control. Chige had been involved in something far darker than Emmanuel could have imagined. And now, it seemed, Uzoma was caught in the web. "You didn't just put her life at risk, Chige," Emmanuel said, his voice heavy with disgust. "You've put both of your lives in danger. What happens when they come for her next? What happens when they come for you?" Chige looked away, guilt written across his face. "I don't know. I don't know what they'll do, but I can't let them hurt her. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you, Uzoma. I promise." Uzoma's face softened, but the worry in her eyes remained. She glanced at Emmanuel, then back at Chige. "But how can we trust you, Chige? After everything that's happened?" The silence in the room was thick with tension. Emmanuel still had the gun in his hand, but his grip had loosened slightly. The situation was spiraling out of control, and he knew there was only so much they could do to stop it. Suddenly, there was another knock on the door. Louder this time, more urgent. Chige's eyes widened, and he turned toward the door. "They're back. It's not safe here anymore." Before anyone could react, the door flew open, and a group of armed men stormed in, their faces hidden behind masks. Emmanuel's heart skipped a beat. It was happening. The danger that had been hanging over them all evening was now a reality. "You should have stayed out of this," one of the masked men said, his voice chillingly calm. "Now you're all part of the plan." Emmanuel raised the gun again, his hands now steady. "You'll have to go through me first." Chige, looking torn between fear and anger, stepped forward. "No, Emmanuel. This is my mess to clean up. I'll handle it." But before Chige could do anything, one of the men grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall. "You'll handle nothing," the man snarled. "This is bigger than you. You're just a tool in this game. Now, do as you're told, and no one gets hurt." Uzoma, terrified, reached out to Chige. "No, don't." But before she could finish, one of the men knocked her hand away roughly, sending her stumbling back. "Stay out of this," he barked. "This isn't your fight." But as they stood there, Emmanuel made a split-second decision. He wasn't going to let them hurt Uzoma. Not now. Not after everything. He raised the gun, pointing it at the men who had just entered. "Get away from her," he demanded, his voice low but firm. "I don't care who you are or what you want, but you're not touching her." For a moment, the room was deathly silent. The masked men looked at each other, then at Emmanuel. And then, as quickly as it had started, everything exploded. The tension in the room was unbearable. The sound of Emmanuel's breathing echoed in his ears as he stood, gun pointed at the men, his heart pounding. Time seemed to slow down as the two masked men in front of him sized him up, their eyes cold and calculating. The other men who had stormed into the room stood in silence, watching intently. "You're making a big mistake," one of the men finally said, his voice mocking. "You think you can stop us with a gun? This is bigger than you." Emmanuel's grip tightened on the gun. His hands were no longer shaking. His mind was clear. The fear that had once gripped him was replaced by a raw determination. He wasn't going to let these men hurt Uzoma or Chige. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. "I don't care what's bigger than me," Emmanuel said, his voice steady. "You won't hurt them." The leader of the men, the one who had grabbed Chige earlier, chuckled darkly. "You really think we'll let you walk out of here? You've already crossed a line." Emmanuel's eyes darted toward Chige and Uzoma. They were standing together, still shaken, but slowly regaining their composure. Uzoma had tears in her eyes, but there was something different about her now, something fierce. "Emmanuel," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't. This is my mess, not yours. I don't want you to get hurt." But Emmanuel didn't listen. He couldn't. If he didn't stand up now, what would it all have been for? The life he had carved out for himself, the small but meaningful moments of kindness he had shared with Uzoma, it all meant something. It wasn't just about survival, it was about doing what was right. One of the masked men lunged forward, reaching for the gun. But Emmanuel was faster. He pulled the trigger, the loud sound of the gunshot ringing out in the room. The man staggered back, clutching his shoulder, a grunt escaping his lips. The other men froze in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. "Don't move," Emmanuel shouted, his voice low and dangerous. He kept the gun trained on them, his every muscle tense. Chige, still recovering from the shock, stepped forward. "Emmanuel, stop. We don't need more bloodshed. Let's figure this out," calmly. But Emmanuel's eyes were locked on the intruders. "There's nothing to figure out, Chige," he said, his voice hard. "They've already made their choice. Now they'll pay the price." The leader of the men, still recovering from the shock, glanced at his fallen comrade, then back at Emmanuel. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered. "But you don't know what you've just started." Emmanuel's jaw clenched. He wasn't afraid of threats anymore. Not now. Suddenly, the room was filled with a loud crash. The front door slammed open, and in the chaos, a group of uniformed officers rushed in, guns drawn. It was the police. Emmanuel had no idea how they had arrived, but in that moment he didn't care. The tension in the room shifted, and the intruders knew they had lost. "Drop your weapons," one of the officers shouted, and the masked men hesitated for a split second, unsure of what to do. But they were outnumbered, and they knew it. "Move," the officer commanded again, and the men slowly raised their hands in surrender. Emmanuel stood frozen, still gripping the gun, his mind racing. Was this really over? Had they been caught, or was this just another twist in the game? The officer quickly approached Emmanuel, his gaze sharp but understanding. "Put the gun down, son. You did the right thing, but this is over now." Emmanuel looked at Uzoma, who was now standing beside Chige. She gave him a small, grateful nod, but there was still fear in her eyes. This wasn't over. Not yet. As the officers handcuffed the intruders and led them outside, the room remained silent, save for the soft murmurs of relief from the group. Emmanuel lowered the gun, his hands shaking for the first time in hours. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, and exhaustion settled over him like a heavy blanket. I didn't know what else to do," Emmanuel murmured, his voice hoarse. I couldn't let them take her. I couldn't let them hurt either of you." Uzoma stepped forward, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved us, Emmanuel. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't done what you did." Chige, still recovering from the shock, looked at Emmanuel, his face softening. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Thank you for protecting her. For protecting both of us." Emmanuel nodded, his thoughts still spinning. The danger wasn't over, he could feel that. There was still more to the story, more to uncover. But for now, he had done what he could. He had protected the woman who had always shown him kindness. He had protected the woman who had trusted him when no one else had. As the police officers escorted the intruders out of the house, Emmanuel turned to leave, but Uzoma stopped him. "Where are you going?" He paused, looking back at her. "I don't belong here, Uzoma. I've done my part. I'm just a gateman. I never asked for this. Uzoma shook her head, stepping closer. No, Emmanuel. You're not just a gateman. You're a man of honor. You're family now. Chij nodded, his voice quieter than before. He's right. You're part of this now. You've earned it. Emmanuel's heart skipped a beat. He had always thought of himself as an outsider, never truly part of the world that surrounded him. But in that moment, as he looked at the two people who had shown him so much respect and gratitude, he realized something. Maybe, just maybe, he had finally found his place. And with that, Emmanuel finally allowed himself to breathe, a sense of calm washing over him. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt like he was ready for whatever came next.